Hello, everyone out there, all you exiles in the wasteland, our beautiful audience that tunes in every single week to listen to ENN. This is podcast number 20. This is Exiles Network News. It's your favorite entertainment news podcast where a panel of film exiles break down the most interesting news topics of the week. And I am joined by luminaries in the world of film and cinema talk. I'm joined by Christian and Paul. Hello, Christian.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are
I'm,
you?
I am very good, and I'm glad to be joined by you. We're going to have a very lively discussion. So I hope you are ready. Bring the hot takes, bring the realness, keep it 100. I trust you.
Exiled for a reason, baby.
For sure. And we're also joined by Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hello, gentlemen. Looking forward to tonight. Definitely going to get myself in some trouble tonight, I think.
All right. And I'm sure you know you're going to hit us with a potent dose of positivity because that's all you do. You're always positive, and we're a bit tired of the positivity coming from you. So,
Don't worry, I'll balance that out for you tonight.
all right, cool. So, here's a rundown of topics that we're going to discuss this week. Our main topic is going to be on Birds of Prey, the fallout from its opening weekend and its future financial prospects. We're going to do what we're going to call an autopsy because this movie seems to be DOA, dead on arrival. Then we're going to talk about the Oscars. The Oscars was last weekend. It's a celebration of film at the highest level. We're going to have a brief and light discussion touching on what we thought about the winners, what we thought about the festivities, the whole shebang. And then in our coming soon section, we're going to talk about two trailers. It's been a very light week for trailers because, I think the Oscars took up a lot of bandwidth from Hollywood. So we're going to talk about Netflix's Altered Carbon Season 2. And we're going to talk about The Hunt, a delayed movie, which will finally be releasing this year. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So for our first topic, Birds of Prey, autopsy, I will hand it over to Paul to steer the ship on this one. So, Paul, lead us.
All right, Lupe. Well, this has been dominating my timeline for the last couple of days, that's for sure. I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience,
Yeah.
but Birds of Prey opened
Yeah.
well below projections. So it came in with 33.2 million domestically, 81.2 worldwide, for including 48 million from 78 offshore territories. So that compares to projections we were hearing in the 50 million to 55 million dollar domestic, with about 110 million globally. So it came in well below expectations. A lot of talk of empty theaters, a lot of head scratching as to why people didn't show up. It's, and then you get a lot of media spin as well coming out of this. So I guess you can compare this to the original Suicide Squad too, which brought in 133 million in his opening weekend, and almost the same number of theaters as Birds of Prey brought in 33 million. So definitely a disappointment. But there's a number of questions around this. You'll see sides arguing right now. Is this a failure? There's been a lot of comparisons made to John Wick 2 to try and illustrate that it's not a failure. That's a movie that was a second sort of in its franchise. I guess you want to say that Birds of Prey is the second in the Suicide Squad series. It came out around the same time. It had a similar opening weekend with an R rating, so people have used that one to sort of prop it up and say, no, look, this box office isn't a problem. Conversely, you could look at this and say, yes, but this is the DC brand. This is a comic book movie. This is the lowest opening for a DC film in the DCEU, and the lowest opening since Josh Brolin's Jonah Hex back in 2010. So, we've got a lot of questions around this. I think the first one, though, is this a failure? What defines a failure? Does box office matter? Does critical acceptance matter? And then from there, we can talk about why we think people didn't show up and what the impact is going forward. But Lupe, why don't you start us off and let us know? Do you think this is a failure, and what do you think defines a failure? Does the box office matter?
Um, well, I mean, I've always said that box office doesn't matter. It really doesn't to me personally. And if you loved uh Birds of Prey, if you've seen it, box office really shouldn't matter to you in terms of how you feel about the movie. Now, where box office does matter is in future offerings from the studio. So with this bomb, you can bet your bottom dollar that the next Birds of Prey movie, whether they do Gotham City Sirens, the next Harley Quinn project is not going to be like this. They're going to change something up. Now, I don't know what lessons they're going to learn, because one thing that we have learned about WB is that they always learn the wrong lessons from their failures. That's the saddest thing about this studio that is the steward of our beloved DC characters. So, while we're going to go into this conversation, it's an important conversation. People need to remember that at the end of the day, box office should not matter to you, but it does matter to the studio. And that's why it's important to talk about it. Also, this is a referendum, and this is a consequence of decisions that have been made in terms of them changing things from, the Zack Snyder helmed DCEU to this new Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada, more loosey-goosey, lack of vision, no cohesion type of DC films. There was a lot of box office success under Zack Snyder, but there wasn't critical success. They didn't have their 300 Rotten Tomatoes critics on their side. And so what they decided to do was alienate a lot of fans, alienate general audiences who went to those movies. I mean, Suicide Squad made over $700 million worldwide. This is not even accounting for China, which could have given it another at least 100 or maybe even 150 million. It would have been approaching $1 billion. Batman v Superman came close to $1 billion. It was, about 870 something million. Wonder Woman also made a lot of money. So Man of Steel also, as a starter, as the first one, made a good amount of money. And so they decided that, that wasn't enough, because a lot of those films, the critics hated them because critics just have a hard-on, a fetish for hating Zack Snyder. And so they decided, okay, we want to please critics. We want critics to love us like they love Marvel movies. And they decided to do everything in their power to appeal to critics, to their political sensibilities, to their film taste sensibilities, pander to them as much as possible. And that's what this movie is. So we're going to discuss this in depth because it's a referendum on their decision making, and it affects us as fans because I'm not happy with the way Warner Brothers has taken things. So we really need to critique and criticize what they've done, and they deserve this amount of scrutiny from fans. So,
okay, Christian, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't have a ton to add. I agree with Lupe. I'm sorry, but the movie is a failure. I really don't know how else you can look at it. Now, yeah, from an artistic standpoint, sure, it doesn't matter. And I've been a fan of some pretty serious box office whiffs. Children of Men is a fantastic movie. Blade Runner is a great movie. Neither one of those movies did gangbusters at the box office. I have a couple of movies that are sitting on my shelf right now that I purchased that I love, and I really could give a crap whether or not other people liked it. But whether or not I'm ever going to see another one of those movies in the future, a sequel to that movie, that does matter as to whether or not that movie is a bomb. I may still get part one and I can enjoy it for the rest of my life, but I'll never see another one ever again. And I think that that's why, especially, this matters as to whether or not this movie, that's why the box office matters and whether or not this movie is a bomb. It's called the movie industry for a reason. An entire economy surrounds all of these films, all of these movies, and comic book movies in particular do not exist in a vacuum. They absolutely do not. These characters and IPs are beloved by so many people going back to their childhood, and some people are being introduced to them now. There are children coming up now that are just starting to get introduced to these characters, and they will fall in love with these characters just as much as their parents and grandparents did before them. People are interested in them. They want to see them taken care of. Of course, we all have very strong opinions on which way we think they should go. And I think right now, with DC, with Warner Brothers, there is a feeling that these beloved characters are not being taken care of. Whether you love Zack or not, that's a conversation for another day. There is, I think, a feeling out there that they have taken a universe that had been started with a cohesive storyline, with beauty to it. I may not have personally loved every decision Zack made, but there was a lot that I did enjoy with that. And no matter what, I knew that when I went to go see, I thought when I went to go see Justice League, I would be getting some sort of continuation there to something that he started. There's this connective tissue that would be there. And now, nuclear bomb, and they don't have a freaking clue what they want to do. You want to make movies that go off in different directions? Hey, man, I'm a big fan of that. Comics do that all the time. But these arcs exist in comic books where you have this connective tissue, and the artists really take care and really care about their creations and love what they're doing. You can see that on the pages. And right now with DC, I ain't seeing that. And I think Birds of Prey is just another example of that. Where are they going? I don't know if people know. Now, I understand we've been conditioned by Marvel to have one universe. That's fine. And we can have an argument on another day on whether or not that's right or wrong. Forget the conditioning for a moment. I don't even think this has to do with any connected universe. This is just DC not having a freaking clue. Each one of these, this is not just movies having a different flavor. There's no direction. So that's me. I have a lot to rant about tonight, so I'll shut up and move back to Paul. So that's how I feel.
Okay.
So yeah, to me,
Yeah.
We all
it's
do.
a failure. I'm
We all
sorry.
do. We all.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can really slice this any other way. I mean, I see a lot of spin online, people trying to justify that it's not a failure. The most common argument you see is that it made its production budget back, almost made its production budget back on its opening weekend. So it might not lose money. I have seen a few headlines saying that it is expected to lose money, but let's for argument's sake say it comes in around break even. That's got to be a failure. I mean, they don't make movies to break even, right? Now, that being said, Warner Brothers is overly concerned with what critics think. They want that critical approval so desperately. They're so proud of that tomato when they get it. And boy, did they show the tomato off for this one. It's on every piece of marketing that I've seen since they got their certified fresh. Now it's dropped a little bit. The tomato's at 80% critics, 80% audience. And in fairness, the majority of audience members that have seen this film that I've seen, at least the comments that I've seen, have said that it's either okay to decent to great. So in that sense, perhaps it's not a failure. And sometimes critical and audience scores are enough to get more of something when you think you probably wouldn't, when the box office wouldn't justify it. Maybe this will be the sign to them that they're on the right track. I have a feeling what Warner Brothers is going to learn from this is that they're on the right track because they're getting those tomato scores. To me, this is a clear sign they're not on the right track. But they have a history of learning the wrong lessons, as you said, Lupe.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no faith that they're going to take the right lesson from this. Obviously they are showing some acceptance of the fact that this didn't meet expectation. I mean, just today they came out and, I'm not sure whether it was today or yesterday, they changed the name of the film to Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey in theater listings and online to help make it easier to find. Like that, like they believe that that's part of the problem. I have a real hard time believing that that's going to make much of a difference. I think anyone that knew this movie was out and wanted to find it could have figured it out. I mean, it's not that hard to go through your local theater listings and figure out which one is the one with Harley Quinn on the poster. So I'm not sure what exactly they think this late name change is going to do, but we'll see. It's an acknowledgement, at least, that the financials are coming in below expectations. And to the point that you guys made, I mean, my big concern with science fiction has been these box office. When these films continue to underperform, you're not going to get more. When you see something like Blade Runner 2049, when you see Ghost in the Shell, pretty sure Live, Die, Repeat didn't do very well in theaters. Tron Legacy, we never got the sequel to that because it didn't meet expectations. When these things don't meet expectations, you lose the things you enjoy. So if you enjoy it, go out and support it. If you want more of it, go out and support it. And obviously, so far, not a lot of people have, or not enough people have been standing up to support this movie. So
that's a big issue, by the way, Paul. That's a huge issue. Hold your thought. That's online excitement and online talk doesn't necessarily equal box office, does it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the three of us on here understand that. But I'm wondering if Warner Brothers understands that. And it worries me, by the way, about Sonic coming out, because I'm one of the people that was pissed off with the way Sonic looked, and I'm happy with the redesign. I'm going to see this movie, but I wonder if other people are going to, if they just said it to say it, they went off and changed it. Now nothing's going to happen. It's really cool to be online, right, and to be woke and to say I support all this stuff. But did they put their money where their mouths were? Apparently not, because it only made $30-some-odd million. Yeah. So no. I should shut up because I'm gonna get myself in a hole.
Well, we can get into a larger conversation on that, right? Because the same people that were propping this film up are the ones pointing fingers at everyone else for not supporting it. So that's part of probably the next conversation. So without further ado, no. Let's go right into did you guys see it? If you didn't, why didn't you see it? And in a broader sense, why do you think the general audience didn't show up? Lupe, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, well, I have quite a bit to talk about, so be patient with me. I'll try to breeze through them. And if I mention anything that you guys are going to mention, just feel free to reiterate and go, even further with it when you pick it up. So the first thing that I knew was going to be a hurdle for the film is that it's a no-name director and it's a first-time director. So Cathy Yan, I'm not questioning her skill level or her acumen as a filmmaker, although we did hear that they brought on the director of the John Wick series to do pretty extensive reshoots. But I don't think that was a factor because the general public and even a lot of people in film Twitter and who follow these things really didn't know too much about this. The media did a pretty good job of keeping it under wraps because they're rooting for the film, and it's kind of a little bit of a disgraceful thing because obviously it's a female filmmaker, and there's this whole thing about the competency of female filmmakers in making action movies, and to have a situation like this where a man is coming in to correct mistakes goes completely against the narrative that they're trying to push, rightfully so. That women are capable. People might take it in the wrong way when it's just a situation that has happened with male directors and it's happening with a female director. So that's equality for you. Women and men can be as competent as each other. So her being a first-time director, I feel like she didn't really know how to market the movie because remember, Zack Snyder, over years, he knows how to market movies. Like all those still shots that he'll post and break the internet. David Ayer was doing the same thing. David Ayer knows how to get people hyped. James Gunn is really good at marketing. Patty Jenkins, she's amazing at marketing like movies. She's really good at being able to sell the project as it's in development and as it's coming to the big screen. So I feel like the fact that people didn't recognize the name, the fact that this is her first film and she is not as good at marketing as someone who's been at it for a while, although some people just aren't, no matter how much. Those were two factors. Now you may say, okay, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't usually have like big directors, but Kevin Feige is the one that takes on the role of marketing the movies and selling them and creating hype and dropping little gems here and there and quotes, and the DC doesn't have that. So that was the first hurdle, and that contributed to the lack of enthusiasm for the film in the general public. Then secondly, this whole thing that they're going on with the no connected DC universe, everything is going to be disparate and separate, and everything's going to be a solo film. Like I don't want to call it a conspiracy because I think it's very valid. I think that Marvel Cinematic Universe fans created a world in which only the MCU can exist as a cohesive cinematic universe. Everything else that has tried it, if you notice, Marvel fans, and when I say Marvel fans, I'm including critics because they don't report as disparate, detached commenters on film. They talk and they act like fanboys of Marvel. And whenever anything tries to do that, they say, "Oh, you're copying Marvel." And immediately they start bashing it. They start picking it apart. They start trying to make sure that it doesn't exist. They did it for Dark Universe. They've done it for Kong Skull Island. They did it for, the DC EU. And so in order to appease these Marvel fans, WB, as usual, learning all the wrong things and, alienating their core fan base, decided, oh, we're going to do only solo movies. Nothing is going to be connected. And of course, the Marvel fans were happy. Yay! MCU is the only connected universe in the world, and that's the way it should be because only Marvel can do things that are beneficial to fans. And so what you have is a situation where nobody needs to see these kind of films. Like, you can easily skip this film and just go on to Wonder Woman 84. You don't need to know what happens in this to know what happens in Wonder Woman 84, or know what happens in this, know what happens in the upcoming Batman movie. So that's why you don't have that safety net that Marvel has with a lot of their movies, where people feel like, oh, I'll just see the movie just because, there's going to be a cameo. That's one thing that Suicide Squad, the first Suicide Squad, was able to benefit from. The fact that it was connected to Batman v Superman and connected to Justice League as well. So that's another thing that's working against their movies, and another thing that they really need to sit down and reconsider. Then also, I felt like this movie, although it stars Harley Quinn, and Harley Quinn is it's a massive character, as you can see from her success in the first Suicide Squad movie. And if you go to any conventions, the number of Harley fans is just too much. But then Margot Robbie decided that she wanted it to be so focused on Harley Quinn that she wasn't going to cast iconic characters. There are a lot of nobody knows who Huntress is. Nobody knows who, Renee Montoya is. Nobody knows who Cassandra is. Nobody, Black Canary is, on the scale of being popular, only comic book fans really know who she is. So that was a bad choice. Some people have said that's because Margot Robbie wanted the spotlight to herself, and I would not be surprised because the evidence, supports that narrative. She could have, cast popular characters like Catwoman, like Poison Ivy, like Batgirl. Like, there are characters that have more name cachet that she could have leaned on. But if you bring those characters in, it's not going to be Margot Robbie and the Birds of Prey. These are like massive characters that are going to have their own fandoms, people who even prefer them to Harley Quinn. So she pretty much, as a producer and person who put it together, she pretty much put the film behind the 8 ball by doing this. Then also, I feel like they even used less iconic versions of the characters, if that makes sense. So for us who know these characters and know what they are at their best, and the versions of them that appeal to the widest audience and had the biggest impact, and people always refer to, it seems like they tweaked them and made them lesser than they could be. I'm all for changing things. I'm all for new iterations and experimenting. But if you're going to experiment, you got to make it as good or even better. Making it worse and less appealing just makes no goddamn sense. And they decided to do that against all logical thought and reason. And so they've been setting themselves up for disaster. Then also, the movie was not marketed enough. This movie, the first trailer came out only 4 months before the movie came out. Like, that was so weird and so just like a poor choice. And this is the new thing that Toby Emmerich has been doing. He was promoted to the president of WB from New Line, which is kind of like a subsidiary slash affiliate of WB. And one thing that New Line is known for doing is making films on the cheap, reining in budgets, and then trying to make movies that make a big profit off tiny budgets. So one thing that he did coming in was he slashed a lot of budgets on DC's big blockbusters. That's why you can see Shazam has questionable quality. That's why you can see that even the Birds of Prey, the budget is not that big. The trailers have been coming out later. There've been less trailers. There've been less media events and world press conferences and world tours than when Snyder was around. And these films were massive event films, each one of them. And so if you look at, for example, like the first Suicide Squad, the first trailer for that came out January 2015, and the movie released January 2016, I think, and the movie released in August 2017. But anyway, it was about almost 20 months apart. Like the hype had been building. They'd been releasing trailers and setting it up. Same thing for BVS. The first trailer for BVS came out about maybe like a year and a half before the movie came out. Wonder Woman, the first trailer for it came out about 9 months before. That movie didn't even like do as well financially as I feel it could have if they had brought out trailers earlier. It did about 100 million, which at that time was like about the low point for DC movies. But yeah, the movie was not marketed enough. Like they waited until the last second before they started marketing. And really there should have been a teaser or trailer or something at least 9 months before that to, start spreading the word and letting it grow in the public consciousness. So they did a poor job in terms of the marketing budget. Then they did a really bad job in terms of the quality of the marketing, the type of marketing. And this is probably what affected me the most, the way that they marketed this movie. And it was a slew of things. They pretty much opened the book of the rules that you should not break, and they broke every single one of them. So first thing is that they were talking about how, there's no male gaze, and this whole sort of Twitter, social media, white feminist narrative of how Suicide Squad was about the male gaze and the way that men look at women. So they intentionally went about quote unquote desexualizing the look of the characters, which to me, they can feel free to do that. And I feel like there's nothing wrong in doing that, but why don't you just do that and carry on with the movie rather than preaching about it and talking down to people and, carrying on with this holier than thou attitude about how anyone that liked Suicide Squad is a male misogynist, and creepy, and this is the movie that is the better one, and this is the upgrade. So that was a huge turnoff. They marketed it as this girl gang movie and women don't need men, and I could see that all the male characters in the movie were despicable, terrible characters. I mean, why would I want to see that? I'm a man. Why do I want to go see a movie that bashes me? I'm not a masochist. That just makes no sense. So I started to feel like the movie just wasn't for me. I mean, you're free to carry on your narrative or whatever you want to do, but I don't have to participate in it. And I feel like a lot of people felt that way. They just got turned up and just felt, all right, this is not for me. I don't have to see. And this is not the first time this has happened. If you look at, for example, like Terminator Dark Fate, same thing happened with that movie. The director and the cast were carrying on with this holier than thou, we're better than you, we're better moral people than you, feminist narrative, and it turns people off. And no matter what you say, people are getting turned off by a lot of the narratives that are coming out of Hollywood. I think it's a very small community there. They all think alike. They all do a lot of what the right wing calls virtue signaling, which is, you just use all these words and try to show that it's basically holier than thou. Like, try to prop yourself up as this morally perfect person who's above everything, and it comes up as inauthentic, and people are just people are really not with it. So yeah, and also they distanced it from Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad, a movie that was very successful, had 700 above 700 million in box office with no China, was a massive pop culture phenomenon, had so many weeks at number one, despite the massive critical antagonism to it. They decided, we're gonna ditch that movie. We're gonna alienate the fans of that movie, and it's insulting to fans. They completely insulted fans of Suicide Squad by saying this is an upgrade. This is the feminist version. Oh, it's no longer male gaze. And that movie had a lot of fans. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to unite people and bring people together. Don't divide. And what they did was divide and discard and alienate. And one last thing that I want to say before I hand it over back to you guys, that Wonder Woman is a feminist movie, but it succeeded where this movie failed. Why? When Wonder Woman was being marketed, Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins said, this movie's for everyone. They said this movie is not just for women. It's a woman's movie. They said this movie's for everyone. Steve Trevor even played a vital role in being an example of a great guy. He's a man's man. Even Patty Jenkins said that he's a man's man. He's very masculine. He is traditionally masculine. He is polite. He's courteous. He's brave. But he gives Diana her voice. He's an example of a good man. There are evil men in this world. They're evil women. They're great women. They're great men. And Birds of Prey decided to take the other feminist stance. The toxic feminist stance, the social media feminist stance, the white feminism stance, which is that men are trash, all men are bad, and women are great, and women don't need men. And it turns off a lot of men. And to be sincere, it turns off a lot of women. As per like general public, I'm not talking about people like women on Twitter or Tumblr fans or, the film Twitter, social media feminists. Like in general, people just aren't with the narrative. So that's what happened. That was what turned me off from the movie. That part, as the movie got closer and I started to hear all this, I was just like, this movie is not for me. It's fine that it exists, but that I just got turned off, and I just left it alone. I don't have to see it. So I'll hand it back to you guys. I know I took a long time, but whenever you have disasters like this, it's usually not one thing, it's a host of things. And in my opinion, all these things contributed to this box office disaster.
All right, Lupe. Well, I'm glad you were able to get that off your chest. What do you have to add to what Lupe just shared with us?
That's difficult to follow up, man. I mean, I don't know, that there was definitely a lot there. First off, Lupe, I hope I am not one of those Marvel fans that you're talking about at the beginning.
No.
But I do hear where you're coming from, because I exist in a number of those communities, and I'm part of a lot of those fan communities, and I see them talking back and forth with one another, and there are times I roll my eyes. So it's true. I didn't see the movie for two reasons, and number one was timing. I just had a lot going on with my family this weekend, so we just didn't have the ability to make it work. And we had a couple of things that we really need to take care of, and we really needed to see a few people this weekend. So going to a movie, unfortunately, was just not going to happen. I'm sure if I really wanted to see it, we would have tried, but we didn't. And that goes to reason number two. It didn't interest me. So that's the second reason. And I'll repeat what I told you guys in a previous pod. That depresses me, because since this superhero / comic book movie boom started with Blade, I have always found something to be somewhat excited about in almost every movie that I see advertised. Sometimes I'm disappointed when said movie gets released, but for the most part, I'm excited with something that I see in it. And this one, when the marketing started, was not for me. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm going to try to pinpoint some of it as we talk about this. I can tell you this. I'm going to rant for a second, and I apologize for the rant. I did not. Thank you. At least I get carte blanche. No, I did not stay away from this movie because I am some sort of misogynist or sexist. And I completely agree with that fucking narrative that's been built up around this movie. To say that I stayed away from this movie because of that or because I don't like female characters is bullcrap to the highest degree, and I'm personally insulted by that.
Mm-hmm.
I adore the X-Men. They are hands down my favorite team in all of comic books. And guess what? The X-Women are some of the best characters.
Mm-hmm.
Emma Frost, Jean Grey, Rogue, who cannot
Storm.
feel the touch. Storm, thank
Mhm.
you. Rogue, who can't feel the touch of another human being. Are you
Mhm.
kidding me? Her story, go take a look at the stories about Wanda growing up with her father and the kind of father that she had and what she was able to overcome. You're going to tell me that these female characters are not powerful? Oh, they absolutely are. Wonder Woman is sitting, I'm staring at it right now. Right now, guys, it's sitting in front of me in Blu-ray form, right in front of me on my shelf. It is a fantastic movie that contains one of the top 5, for me, comic book scenes of all time in No Man's Land.
Mhm.
That scene almost made me tear up. It had everybody around me in the theater crying. That movie is fantastic, and I will fight anyone who doesn't like it because I love it. I adore 2 Star Wars female characters in Rey and Ahsoka Tano. Both of those characters are great characters. Their journeys mean so much to me. Yes, and that includes Rey. Their journeys mean a lot to me. I love them, and I love them because they're strong, not because they're sexualized, but because they're strong, they're interesting, they're fascinating, all of the above. Now, let me say this real quick. This leads me into something else. Sexists and racists do exist. And I think that they are out there, and they do make up some of this narrative, and they do make a dent, a little bit of a dent into why a movie maybe doesn't make 500 million versus 600, okay? Or maybe doesn't make 400 million versus 500 million, whatever it is. And we've seen this with other movies. We've seen it in the Star Wars universe. We've seen this around, but they are not the singular reason why a movie fails, okay? I think there's a lot of other reasons as well. We talked a little bit about it before. The online talk and excitement around it doesn't necessarily equal the money. People jumped on this girl power train. They said all the right things, but then they didn't bother to go see it. The very people that jumped on it and said, yes, I love this movie because of ABC, they didn't go out and spend the money because of it. I think that this was a very strange quasi sequel to Suicide Squad where there was no Batman, there was no Will Smith, a Harley Quinn character that's the only link to these other characters. And by the way, this version of Harley feels completely different than what we got before.
Mhm.
That's not bad, but how about you give us some sort of evolution? It's just boom, you're marketing this completely different version of Harley and throwing it in our faces. It doesn't feel like the Harley that we knew to kind of grow in love in Suicide Squad that was so highly entertaining. The
Mhm.
complete disconnect that I talked to you guys about the DCEU has now, according to the fan communities that I'm a part of, has confused a ton of people.
Mhm.
Joker is in this DC Dark label. That's fine. You can have those movies exist out of the box if you want to. It could be disconnected. But Birds of Prey was supposed to be disconnected. Now Suicide Squad 2 is also supposed to be connected. And now we've seen photos of Harley looking completely different than she does in Birds of Prey. Aquaman 2, Wonder Woman 84, they're all connected. But no, wait a minute. We're focusing on solo movies now. We're focusing on solo characters. Makes no sense to comic book fans, the general audience, and all the other people that you want to spend money on these movies. So hence, with all that I said to you before, the marketing becomes a complete freaking disaster. As Lupe, you just said before, I made a note of it when you were talking. Margot Robbie, she got so much more involved in this, and she convinced the WB brass that Harley should be the central character. Cool. It's cool. I got no problem with that. But the supporting characters, by the way, that she chose, they're not birds of prey.
Mhm.
They're not birds. What are they? This is all over the place. They would have been better served to have the trio, the holy trio of Poison Ivy, Harley, and Catwoman. Have those 3 start off going on their own. Now you got the general audiences. You got comic book people that are into it. People, I think, would have bought into that, and Harley Quinn and those women would have been a better choice. So now you have to market this movie. Is it a girl power movie? Is it a Harley movie? Oh, no, but wait. We need to introduce all these new Birds of Prey characters, but we're going to get fun music. We're going to get color. There's violence. But it got to this point that the people that I knew that were into this movie, then they started to get dropped out. And that's both women and men, by the way. So the marketing gets focused on this super feminist narrative. And I repeat, by the way, that's not a problem. You could be super feminist, but when it comes to the focus of the marketing, and then people are made to feel guilty for not being excited about it because of that, and then they're being preached to, people don't like that shit. They don't like that. And feminists aren't going to like that. And masculine people, no one's going to like that. No one likes to be preached to about that kind of stuff. I'll throw it to Paul on 2 final points. Number one, I will say this. Comic book fans like me aren't necessarily the people that are going to make and break your movie, right? If you want your movie to make $1 billion, you need more than just the comic book fans. You need more than just me. But when you've lost me, when you lost the guy that's basically going to see any comic book movie that comes out there because I'm just a consumer when it comes to this stuff, gimme, 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 I want more. When you've lost me, you've lost the people that love the comic series and can validate this for you. That little bit that can be the validators to say, yeah, this is a good movie for not only the comic book fans, but I think people like my wife and my nephew and are going to like it. Now you got $1 billion movie. When you've lost us and we're saying, go to hell, you've lost it. Because when you got somebody like me that will go see an MCU movie and love it just as much as Man of Steel, boom, you're dead. When I'm turning my back on a movie, you're dead. Because I'll go see both of those movies and I didn't want to go see this. That's a problem. And don't tell me it's because I don't want to see female movies, because I'm hyped for Black Widow and I am hyped for Wonder Woman 84. Both of those movies are opening weekend movies for me. So I don't want to hear shit about it. It's because of a woman thing. Bull crap. The last thing I'll mention is, and this is the final thing I will say before I throw it to Paul, is I do not believe the R rating is a big deal. And I completely disagree with that narrative, because Logan, Deadpool, and Joker all say hi. Okay. Yeah. So if an R-rated movie is done right, if an R-rated movie is done properly, if the marketing is done that in a way where people want to see it, it's going to win. Deadpool was crude. Yes, I understand that. It had the swearing, the violence, and the sex. But that movie was successful not because of the swearing, violence, and sex. That enhanced the comedy of that movie, the fun of that movie, the fact that we, even with all of that, we still got a likable character and we wanted to see his arc. I didn't give a shit about this. And at the end of the day, that's the problem. And it wasn't just me. There's a lot of people out there, and that includes women, that didn't give a crap about this movie.
Yeah.
Now I'll throw it to Paul.
All right. Well, you guys have covered a lot of the points. I'll just say from my own perspective, in order, I guess, of most important reason to least. Number one, I just didn't like the trailers. I felt, and I said this to you guys back when we reviewed the trailers, I felt like this movie wasn't for me. I thought they were making it clear that this was not for my demographic, both because of gender and because of age. This was marketed specifically to women, and I think younger women. And that's fine. That's great. But go support it. I mean, budget accordingly, and better make sure that those audiences show up. There was a lot of talk. I'll get to this in a second. There's the whole marketing approach and the narratives from both the cast and and the media that were a bit of a turnoff. But number one, I didn't think the trailers looked good. I said that at the time. Number two, I didn't buy into the premise, this widely accepted media narrative that the only thing good about Suicide Squad was Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. I just didn't buy that. I liked her as a supporting character in Suicide Squad. Mostly in the flashback scenes. I liked her when she was in Belle Rev. I liked her when they were flashing back to her interactions with the Joker. I was less impressed with her in real time. And the more she bantered with the team in Suicide Squad, the more I got tired of her shtick. And what I saw in these trailers was leaning more heavily into the shtick. And it really didn't seem like the same character. It seemed like they took the shtick and emphasized it and threw away the stuff that I thought worked, which is her sort of toxic, dysfunctional, codependent relationship with the Joker. That to me is, now I'm not a Harley Quinn expert. I don't have a real affinity for the character, but that was the piece of the character that interested me. That really toxic, dysfunctional relationship, and that's what I always saw her as the two of them go together. Now, I know you guys have said that this is, that they've tried not to connect this one to Suicide Squad too much. Apparently, there is footage from Suicide Squad in this film, but to me, everything I've seen in the marketing tells me that this film is acknowledging Suicide Squad without embracing it. It's like trying to throw away the stuff that they think people didn't like Jared Leto's Joker, which I actually did like. I liked Jared Leto's Joker. I liked Will Smith. I liked Joel Kinnaman's character. That was the stuff that worked for me, and Harley Quinn works in small doses for me. I don't see that character with that shtick carrying a movie, and I get this whole male gaze thing. I mean, I get the costume in the second half of Suicide Squad had the really short shorts, and I get why women would find that a little male gazy, I guess. But they went to a weird extreme in the other way with this one. This looks like a Party City or a carnival outfit. I don't know what this outfit is. Like, if you wanna do female empowerment, give her combat gear or something, right? Like,
Because she
I
doesn't know
don't
what
need.
the fuck you're doing. That's why. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I don't need.
Son of a
I'm
goddamn.
not saying I need to see more skin. That's not it at all. Although I do think there is an element of the character that where she uses her sexuality to manipulate people, and I think that's part of the character, at least from what I've sort of seen, how I've seen the character drawn in the comics, and the bits I've seen on that character, right? So I'm guessing they've moved away from that. And as I say, I haven't seen the film, but it seemed like they're emphasizing the things that didn't interest me about what I saw from Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad, throwing away Suicide Squad, acknowledging it but not embracing it. And then I've got, the next thing that sort of plays into this is you see all these critics giving it this great score. And I don't care really whether critics like the movies I do. But when I see the critics that trashed Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, criticizing them for being overly grim, dark, and serious and incoherent and this and that, and then praising Shazam as a step in the right direction and calling this one a triumph. Well, that tells me that these people see films very different, and specifically comic book films, very differently than I do. And then you start reading through those reviews, and you see the reviews, and you see what's highlighted. Girl power, so much fun, doesn't take itself too seriously, bright and colorful, confetti blast of fun, like better than Suicide Squad. And then it's the bashing of the prior films that I enjoyed to build this one up. So you take all that together, and it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And then you get to the preaching, and for people that say this wasn't a film that told men it wasn't for them, it may not have outright said, "Hey guys, don't show up," but come on, I mean, there was enough. All you have to do is do a quick search on Birds of Prey and misogyny, and you'll find out. You'll see articles on it. You'll see the comments that Ewan McGregor himself made. I mean, here's a quote right here from Ewan McGregor. He said, we were both really proud to be involved in a film that was a feminist film that tackled misogyny, not only in the sort of extreme ends of misogyny, but also the everyday mild misogyny women have to put up with. And this film is peppered with references to that. We were just proud to be a part of that and be the misogynist in the movie, to help flag that up to guys who need to know that time's done. Need to know that time's done. So, I don't argue with that being misogyny, but I mean, if I want to get preached at, if I want to be told that men are bad, specifically white men are bad, I can go on social media any time of the day and find a lot of people to tell me exactly that message for free. I don't need to go out and pay to be told that. So you've taken away what I like about the character. You've shown me something that looks, like something I'm not interested in, and then told me I'm going to be preached at when I go. So, and even despite that, I still would have given this film a chance. But I asked my wife if she was interested in seeing it. She had no interest. She's actually going out for a girls' night on Friday night. Actually, the three of them were going to go see a movie. They couldn't find a movie they wanted to see, so they went out for dinner instead. That says something. I mean, now they're outside the demographic. I'm over 40, my wife's over 40, and the women she was going out with were in their late 30s or early 40s as well. So this wasn't clearly a movie for them. I mean, they hadn't even heard of it. So I guess, as I say, it's aimed at a very narrow demographic. So I think that sort of leads into the conversation about why didn't the general audience show up? Well, how big is the demographic for this film? How popular is Harley Quinn outside of the Hot Topic crowd, right? And what is the Hot Topic crowd? I'm guessing that's the 13 to 25-year-old crowd, and then you might have a slightly older crowd that has grown up watching this character in the animated series. But when you market this in such a way to exclude members of the audience. And as I say, there's going to be people that say, no, you're just a misogynist. That's why you think you're excluded. I don't really see it that way. I don't see myself as a misogynist. And I think they did make pretty clear that this was a feminist film. So, I just think that they underestimated what the audience was for this film. And maybe the people that wanted this film are supporting it. Maybe that's just the size of the audience. Like it's not historically bad from a financial standpoint. It looks bad compared to other comic book films. You can say that it looks bad because it's part of the DC brand, but it's certainly not the biggest flop of all time by any means. I mean, it's it's estimated $85 to $100 million production budget. It got that $81 million in the opening weekend worldwide, which is a disappointment, but not horrific. Like something like Ford versus Ferrari, which I've seen this compared to, I believe cost more and made less. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I believe I saw that. And as I say, it's been compared to John Wick 2. So it's not unheard of
Well, I
for
think
this type.
currently Ford versus Ferrari has made more money in its run, but who knows what this will end at?
Story.
So,
I'm talking about opening weekend, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, opening weekend,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, it did. Definitely.
So it's you can spin this, but I think clearly it's a disappointment. I just think maybe the way the audience they made this film for and the way they marketed it limited the size of the audience that this would appeal to. And I think there's been a situation with comic book movies where guys have dragged their wives and girlfriends out for years to see these movies. In this case, as I say, I asked my wife if she wanted to see it. She had never heard of it. It didn't interest her at all. Even now, in fairness, she's never seen Suicide Squad either. She saw me watching it on a plane one time and said, "Hey, like I wouldn't mind watching that with you." So I paused it and said, "Okay, when we get home, we'll watch it." And then she lost interest and never watched it with me. So, so it makes sense that she wouldn't necessarily want to see the Birds of Prey movie, but I bet you that experience is not too uncommon with the general audience. So. It is what it is, but I think media narratives turn people off. I've seen a lot of that, and there is this whole woke culture that I think people are. It's a larger issue, not just with this film. I think people are just getting tired of it. They're just tired of getting preached at, and then the vilification of anyone that doesn't subscribe to the most stringent form of woke culture, right? Then if you don't agree with whatever narrative they're pushing, then you must be a misogynist. You must be sexist.
I think that's an interesting point. You brought up the point about your wife, and my wife did, and I believe I would have to ask her. I unfortunately ran home right from work and I started recording, but I believe a part of her still wants to see this movie. But if she wanted to, she would have fought me over the weekend to say, we got to go see it. Let's get out of there. Let's get out there and go see it. And to my wife's credit, yeah, I may have started dragging her to see some of these comic book movies, but this woman legitimately enjoys Logan, the X-Men franchise. She loves Star Wars. The entire MCU she is a fan of. Her favorite superhero is Superman, adores Man of Steel. She likes that movie. She loves this Christopher Reeve movies too. So now you lost her. That's what I'm trying to say. You've lost her too. So, and that's a woman who's into the comic book stuff. You lost her. That's a problem, guys. That's a serious issue. And by the way, a feminist film, I want to say out there, that's not a bad thing. They exist. I've seen a few of them and I've enjoyed them. But when you're forcing things down my throat and you're preaching to me and saying, F you, I got a problem, that's where I have an issue. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, someone made a joke on Twitter. I wish I thought of it. He said, well, they were going on about male gaze, but it seems like there is no gaze because nobody saw the
and going back to that male gazing, I mean, I talked about Ewan McGregor's comments on misogyny, but I mean, Margot Robbie was the first one to come out and say this is going to be less male gazy than Suicide Squad, right? So they've already gone out of their way to highlight how we're doing away with that because that was way too sexist and misogynist and male gazy, and we're going to give you this upgraded, more woke version. And I get why that might appeal to women and even to some men. I mean, I think most men can appreciate why women would not want to be objectified and sexualized.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't think that's the problem. It's just it's the way they sort of threw it in your face. Just go and do it.
That's the issue. I agree with you.
And in fairness, it's not just the actors. It's the way the media took that and ran with it. And then you get these media critics who have already, developed a significant dislike for many of them, preaching this stuff and praising it. And it just turns you off after a while when these people that crap on the stuff you love and prop up the stuff you don't like, are telling you something's great. Well, of course you're going to think the opposite, right? You're going to be skeptical. That sends up a red flag for me when when those sort of repetitive faces that you see tearing apart the stuff you love are propping something up as a step in the right direction. Well, that's a big, big warning sign. So for me, the critical response was a deterrent, actually, a strong deterrent, over and above the fact that it just didn't look great to me. And and that kind of leads into my next question. I think that what does this say about the divide, about the media narratives and the divide between the critics and the audience? And I don't know how much there is left to say about that, but Lupe or Christian, do you guys, either of you, have anything more to add about that?
No, I that definitely did. I did think about that. I don't have concrete conclusions on what it means, because obviously waivers, sometimes critics align with the audience, sometimes the audience doesn't align with critics. Sometimes it's about interest, sometimes they're so diametrically opposed they might as well be warring factions. But definitely they're not the same. It's not two concentric circles. They're two completely different groups in terms of how critics and audiences think, because critics are all over this movie. It's the greatest thing ever, but general audiences couldn't give less of a shit. Like, nobody cares about this. And the way that the cast, the way that the media has gone about this movie, they've propped it up like it's the best thing ever. And audiences are just like, we don't care. We just really don't care. Like, nobody sees it as anything that they see, that the media and critics see it as. Oh, it's this feminist, iconic thing, a step in the right direction. It's this. It's audiences are just like, we really don't care.
Yeah, just make a movie that entertains us, that we can enjoy, that entertains us. And I think a lot of these media members, I mean, they get so caught up in whatever. I think it just seems to me like these critics get so caught up in the promoting the politics, the perceived politics behind these films. And sometimes they make assumptions about the politics of a film that I think are incorrect. But they'll go off and and base their opinion on a film based on the politics of the film, or what they perceive the politics of the film to be, or even the lack of the political message. Like, what is this film trying to say? It's not promoting my agenda, so it doesn't get a good score. I think people are just tired of it. People are getting tired of that crap. It's totally turned me off, critics, to be honest. I'm right back to where I was as a kid, watching trailers and ignoring the critics, and just, if the trailer looks good, go watch the movie.
Yeah, and I typically do ignore critics. I've been ignoring them for a while, but because of the advent of social media and how connected you are to people, your followers, your mutuals, everybody else that you interact with, it's almost impossible not to see it unless you basically just mute the world. And I think that everything that you guys just said is systemic of what's happening on a larger scale. It's not just in entertainment. The line between actual news reporting and entertainment has blurred. And yeah, that's both the left and the right. That's both the conservative and the liberal. It's CNN and it's Fox News, both. So that stands to reason that the line between critic and like a corporate shill, or whatever it may be, has now started to blur. And those lines are blurring. And a lot of the quote unquote critics that we see online, they're not doing anything except touting a company line or touting a political line, whatever that may be. And it could be Disney, could be something for WB, could be something that's ultra liberal, could even be something that's ultra conservative, because I've seen that as well. It's usually less than liberal, but it's there. And I've seen that too. And we're seeing it in news as well. In order for me to get actual news lately, I feel like I have to follow individual reporters that are out in the field, the guys that are in Syria reporting on the Syrian civil war, the people that are down in Brazil, that are out in China right now trying to find out what's going on with the virus. Those are the people, because I can't depend on the traditional news companies anymore, because they're more entertainment than they are news. So everybody has an agenda. Every one of these freaking critics has an agenda, right? And you're seeing it right now with this. I can't enjoy a goddamn movie anymore because I have to have an agenda shoved down my throat by either the critics or now apparently the studio. So I guess we are going back to that, Paul. Maybe that's the right move, is to completely ignore what they say. Take a look at some of the marketing and see if it's a movie that you like. And if you like it, you go for it. And if you don't, oh well, then you don't spend your money on it. Big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think trust with critics is lost. At least
It's
for me
gone.
personally, it's
It's
totally
gone.
lost. So you just have to ignore them. I mean, like you say, it's hard to ignore them, but you just have to try, make a conscious effort not to let it influence your decision. In this case, I'll admit the overwhelming narratives from the people that have contributed to taking away the movies I love did have an impact on me in a negative way.
Hmm.
But beyond that, but as I say, I wasn't. The trailers weren't winning me over anyway. And the few people I have talked to that saw the trailer said they thought they looked terrible. So more casual
Yeah.
fans said, "Oh my God, like nothing." Like specifically about the name change, I was talking to a friend and he said nothing, nothing could make me want to see this movie after those god awful trailers.
Wow.
Well,
So
now
you know,
the damage is done at this point, and it's, I mean, what are they going to do? And you know what, Paul, to your point before, it's fine that people enjoy movies that you don't enjoy. I think that's fine. People
yeah,
they're going to
absolutely.
like a certain, and the flip side is that it's wonderful that Paul enjoys movies that somebody else doesn't enjoy. We should have no issue with that. The biggest issue is exactly what you just said. Slamming it down your throat that you're wrong, by the way, for enjoying the type of movie that you like. That's number one.
Mhm.
And number two, every movie should be like the kind of movie that you don't like. Wrong.
Well, that's
That's
the
art.
that's the
That's anti-art.
Well, that's the problem. It doesn't seem like you get to have it both ways, right? Like
Right.
there's a consensus as to what's the right way, and studios chase that because they all want to make the biggest dollar. So,
Mhm.
Warner Brothers tried that, chasing the Marvel formula. It backfired. So now they're going with a new approach, low budget, and maybe target a niche audience with this, I guess, or
Mhm.
try to be, especially politically aware with their film. I guess. So it's and I think that leads into our next question too. Is what does this say about uh, the current direction of DC films and the future direction of DC films? What impact, if any, do you think this is going to have
Hmm.
on on DC films? I mean, Christina Hobson,
Mhm.
who wrote this film, is also scheduled to write the Flash movie and the Batgirl movie.
Mhm.
Um, but also not only from the standpoint of the writer of those films, but what does this say about the approach that DC is taking? More disconnected, trying to distance themselves from the past. Maybe acknowledging, like we saw a bit of this in Shazam, where they kind of acknowledged Batman and Superman without really embracing them. It was an acknowledgement without really showing that we're proud of our old films. And this feels like more of the same. Like it's kind of their shame that they have to acknowledge. But look, we're going in this new great direction that everyone's going to love, and I think that's turned a lot of fans off. So what is this result going to say for their future approach? Are they still going to go with low budget, distance themselves from the past, um, or do they change course again? So what do you guys think? Lupe, start with you. What do you think the impact is on DC films going forward?
Well, one would hope that the impact is to look at the failings of this movie, compare with other movies that have failed, making the same mistakes, stuff like Terminator Dark Fate, stuff like the all-female Ghostbusters movie. Look at a film like Wonder Woman and see, where it succeeded. That's also a feminist film. And then, learn lessons and go forward with that. Try to make films that are more inclusive. One thing that I forgot to mention, and one thing that you know that Warner Brothers even admitted about Suicide Squad was that the cast was so inclusive. That's probably the most inclusive superhero film I have ever seen. Like there's no demographic that wasn't well represented in that film in terms of like having like a major player. You
Well,
know,
and that was a big part of its box office success as well. I
absolutely,
mean, they got a lot
absolutely,
of attendance from those audiences.
yes, and not just domestically, internationally as well, in all regions. But this movie was very very insular and very divisive, and it was very it only catered to a very very small group of people, and the group of people is not just women, it's not just feminists, it's even smaller. It's like this the neoliberal social media feminists. I'm a feminist, but I don't consider myself to be the type of feminist that would support something like Birds of Prey, which is very divisive. And so I hope that they would learn those lessons. But what history has taught us is that WB always learns the wrong lessons from their movies. So I don't see them, applying logic, common sense, or reasoning to their future endeavors. I think they're going to keep on fumbling the bag. They're going to keep on fumbling the ball until Toby Emmerich is fired. I think that this year is a big year for Toby Emmerich. Obviously, the heavy hitters are coming to play. Untouchables like Christopher Nolan, like Denis Villeneuve with Dune, Wonder Woman 84. Patty Jenkins is amazing at marketing. She's not going to make the mistakes that, the people who put a voice behind this movie, the Margot Robbies, Christina Hudsons, the Kathy Yans, the Ewan McGregors, all the foot in mouth disease that was contagious with them. Patty Jenkins is not going to make those mistakes. She's going to say this movie's for everyone. She's going to say men are welcome, men are awesome, but this is a feminist movie, and she's so good at marketing movies. She's not going to make the same mistake. So I think this could be a good box office year. He might be safe, but if there are any more flops like this, like his days are numbered, and hopefully the new person that comes in has a new ethos and they steer things in the right direction. As for Christina Hudson in particular, I've heard her speak, and she's hyper intelligent, very eloquent, competent, but her problem is that she's on this very insular, that's what I call it. It's a very insular group that doesn't get out. They're almost like the guys who stay in their basements all day and don't meet people. They just meet themselves, echo chambers, and this whole like performative wokeness and virtue signaling. And I think that if she does not sort of readjust her position and become more inclusive, I think that she's going to helm a bunch of flops. They're going to be critical darlings because the critics they're liberals. They're also from Los Angeles, and they interact with Hollywood people, and that's what they aspire to be. A lot of them secretly want to be Hollywood stars, and they adore stars. So it's the same political demographic. So they will always champion her. They will always act like everything she says is like the greatest thing ever. But with general audiences, there'll be a disconnect between the reception and the fervor from general audiences and from critics. That's the way I see it going forward. I'm quite bothered that she's going to be writing Flash, and she seems a perfect for Batgirl. Batgirl may suffer the same fate. Apart from that, it's a more popular IP. So we will see going forward. Anyway.
Christian, what do you have to add?
I'll add that I don't think WB ever learns. I don't really think they ever take the proper messaging from anything. I don't. I believe distancing themselves from the past is what you will continue to see. I don't have any illusions that they will go back to the Snyderverse. Let me say something here, and you have to hear me out when I say it. Snyder is a polarizing filmmaker. Let me be very clear. Polarizing did not mean he's bad, but his universe is probably not something that they want to go back to because they can't control him, if that makes sense. He's going to do what he wants. They can't control him.
True.
And his universe is not for everyone, although if sources are to be believed, Snyder was creating something that was actually heading to a more familiar, quote-unquote, comic book universe. But he was going to tell the story about how we get there, which was actually interesting.
I have a feeling, sorry to cut you off, Christian, but I have a feeling that Snyder's version of the characters we all know and love might not be quite what the Hope and Optimism crowd was going for anyway, though. Like I think those might be two different things.
Me, though. You misinterpret me. I'm not talking about the Hope and Optimism crowd. What I'm talking, and you're 100% right. What they want and what more, let's say, traditional people want are not necessarily what Snyder was going for. And that I don't think that will ever be the case. I really don't. Snyder, that's not him. That's not the kind of filmmaker he is. But if the sources are to be believed, he was going to get to something that was more familiar to people. Superman was going to become that symbol that people look up to. Not necessarily Christopher Reeve. This was Henry Cavill's Superman. This was Zack Snyder's Superman. This was a different Superman for this world, for our post 9/11 world.
I
That's
feel like Snyder's Superman resembles the DCAU Superman a lot.
absolutely
The animated Superman. He's not goofy. He's
no,
quite stoic, quite
no,
serious, but still an inspirational figure that the world looks up to.
absolutely. And
I think he was going through all these trials and tribulations, and he was getting there.
he was supposed to get to that point, and he was not going to be the guy that was going to be goofy and sarcastic, but you know what, that's okay. We've talked about that before. I think that's perfectly fine, because maybe that's the to steal from Christopher Nolan, that's the hero we needed, right?
Mhm.
That just not the one we deserved or whatever. That's absolutely, I think that would have been fine. But again, polarizing, and it's okay to say that he's polarizing. That doesn't mean he's bad. There's other directors out there that could be polarizing. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that their style of filmmaking isn't necessarily for the general audiences. I personally believe, and you guys can tell me what you guys think, I think that there is a reason Infinite Earths continues to get pushed, and I think that there is a reason that Flashpoint continues to get hinted at here. It is WB's prototypical ace in the hole, where they can play the comic book nuclear bomb, blow the entire thing up, and using comic book logic, you can keep Robert Pattinson, you can keep Jason Momoa, and you can keep Gal Gadot, because those are working, and you can blow everything apart and say nothing else in the past matters anymore, and we can start from scratch. But we can have our cake and eat it too, because we can get the things that work. That's it.
I think
go ahead.
I think you're right. I think that they're so inexperienced and naive to think that, because we read comics all the time and we know that those events are very messy.
Yeah.
They're very, very, very messy. Now, in comic books, it's something that, we comic fans, we know it happens. It happens so much.
Too much.
That we know that it's going to be, there are jagged edges to it. It's not going to seamlessly fit, but we're used to it. We've been, reading this type of sort of karmic cycle, sort of thing in comic book since we're kids, since, Crisis. And but if you try this on the big screen, it's going to be a huge undertaking. It's something, as I said, I'll always give credit to Kevin Feige in terms of a Crisis on Infinite Earths type of universe, parallel universe collision, and then the fallout from that. Kevin Feige will be able to pull that off so seamlessly. He will seem like a magician. WB is going to fumble this so bad.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to be so terrible. I can't wait.
They'll fuck it up royally. And you know what? It goes back. Honestly, it goes back to my original point that I just said at the beginning here. You can hate Zach, or you can love Zach, or you can be like I am, in between on Zach. He had a freaking cohesive story that he was getting ready to move on with. He had plans for where we were going to go with Green Lantern Corps and all that kind of stuff. Not everything was going to be him. I get that. Not everything was going to be Zach. He was going to kind of be executive producer, doing his thing. But he had this story that had started, and everything was going to be based off what we saw, and it was going to blossom and balloon from there. And Warner Brothers went in and went chop 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 chop, and then now we have and that's where I'm pissed off now, because they are all over the freaking place. So yes, to me, I think they go to the past and they blow it up. They just move farther and farther away from what was, and they're going to move farther and farther away from what they think right now they should be even doing. They're probably going to blow the whole thing up. I still think this screams reboot. Maybe not next year, but at some point in the future. And like Lupe said, it's going to be a freaking mess. It's going to be a mess, because I don't think they know how to handle it. They haven't proven it.
No, I tend to agree with you, Christian. I both you guys, I just don't know. I mean, if that's really the direction they go, where they're going to do some kind of Flashpoint reboot, they are going to muck it up so badly. Yeah. But I mean, and not only that, but you've got a mishmash in the quality of the films now too. You're not only mishmashing characters, you're mishmashing low budget films with epic films. Like you can't even reconcile the quality. Like you couldn't put Shazam in the same world as Paul Lakes. They got rid of Batman and Superman, but you can't even put Shazam with Wonder Woman. It just not Zachary Levi's Shazam. Like that's not going to work. I can't even see how it's going to work with Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam, to be quite honest. If they do Black Adam right, now I'm worried about that one too. But specifically, what does this film say about the current and future direction? And what is Warner Bros. Going to take away from this? I still think that they're going to look at the critic score and they're going to say critics love it. We're on the right track. They're going to look through the comments and they're going to say, look at this. They love that. They love that it's colorful. They love that it's funny and fun. They love that it doesn't take itself too seriously. And those, I mean, those are key words that made me stay away from this film, right? When I hear colorful, funny, and fun, that tells me this is the opposite of what I want to see from my comic book movies. And you know, as
dark, colorless, and no fun.
just morose. I want them to be morbid, nihilistic, and morose. Yes.
I want to be suicidal by the end of this movie.
Yeah, no, but I don't want colorful, funny, and fun. That's not what I want. I've had that shoved down my throat, and I don't want that.
Think about it, like quite literally. Joker, the movie that grossed over $1 billion and won Oscars, which we're going to talk about very soon, is the exact opposite of colorful, lively, and fun.
Yeah, it's none of those things. And it did well because people are sick of having colorful, funny, and fun shoved down their throats. Now, Joker also benefited from the media hype, and I think that was also a bit of an FU to the woke media as well, right?
Which is also the opposite of this, exactly.
Yes, exactly. People are fed up with the woke media, and they're fed up with colorful, funny, and fun being jammed down their throats. People don't want that anymore. But that's not what Warner Brothers is going to take from this. They're going to see these critic reviews and they're going to say, look, we did it right. We hit it on the color. We hit it on the zaniness. We hit it on the fun. And we just need to emphasize those things. And I think they're going to keep going with that. Now, that being said, you have another failure and you know, they'll probably start to reevaluate. But it still feels like they're just throwing shit at the wall, seeing what sticks, and they're going to worry about how they're going to try and mesh it all back together later. Like, I don't even think they're convinced that, like, I'd be surprised if they have a firm plan on Flash being a Flashpoint film and what that actually entails at this point. I have a feeling that at minimum they're keeping their options open, waiting to see how things shake out. Who knows what implication this has on the James Gunn Suicide Squad film. I'm sure they think that one is a guaranteed moneymaker because this is part of their previous plan to bring in the Marvel fan base. I mean, this guy was given his choice of films supposedly because they were so desperate for him to bring the Marvel goodwill over. They tried that with Joss Whedon. It failed miserably. I think they think that the problem there wasn't, and this is unfortunate as well, I think what they learned from bringing in Joss Whedon wasn't that bringing in Joss Whedon was the problem. It was that they should have let Joss Whedon make his whole movie on his own. That's what they learned. And so this time they corrected that mistake by bringing in James Gunn to let him make the whole movie on his own. So they're still trying to win the Marvel audience with James Gunn and his Suicide Squad semi-reboot. They've tried going for the woke media audience with Birds of Prey, and we're seeing how that's working out. They tried going for the family audience with Shazam, and it got their critic approval that they wanted. People, for some reason, the critics hold that up as the best that DCU had to offer until this one. So they're getting the feedback they want. They're getting that approval they were so desperate for from the critics. They're getting that narrative that they want. It's not translating to box office, but I'm not convinced, like you said, Lupe, that until they get rid of Toby Emmerich, I'm not convinced anything's going to change. He's known for low budget. He's making low budget films. He's getting critical approval. And that's probably enough to make him think he's on the right track and to stay the course with what he's doing right now. So it's disappointing, but hopefully, and I don't want to root against films, but Warner Brothers had a pretty bad year this year. And now this year they've got some movies I'm really interested in, like Tenet, Dune especially. Dune is my number two after, it's my number two after Zack Snyder's Justice League, most anticipated film for this year. I have it even ahead of Army of the Dead, which says something. So, I don't want to see those ones flop, because if Dune flops, that's another nail in the coffin of science fiction. But I think there's a decent chance Dune flops. I mean, Denis Villeneuve is a highly respected director who gets great critical reviews. Sci-fi fans love him. I love his movies. Look what Blade Runner 2049 did. I mean, he's not making huge bank necessarily on his films, even though he's so respected and by both critics and audiences. So, I mean, there is a potential that this year flops. I don't see any way that Wonder Woman 84 flops. I think it's going to make its money.
I think that movie's going to do fine.
I
I
think,
really do.
yeah,
Yeah, I think Wonder Woman is 80. I mean, you got Patty Jenkins, you got a lot of goodwill with Gal Gadot built up into there, and I actually, like I said before, I like the marketing for that one. For some reason, there's something about that movie that's turned me on to it way more than Birds of Prey ever could. Ever could.
yeah, I'm a little nervous about Wonder Woman 84, but I'm still interested in seeing it. It hasn't turned me away. I'm worried that it's going to be a little too campy. And I saw a quote today that just made me cringe out of my seat. It was Chris Pine saying that contrasting Steve Trevor from from Wonder Woman, from the original Wonder Woman to this one, where he said, it was more of a gray film, set in the World War, and now he's just more wide-eyed and joyful. And I thought, oh God, there's those keywords. You just hear those keywords, wide-eyed and joyful, and all the pain and trauma from the hope and optimism crusade comes rushing back, right? So, oh God. So
Warner Brothers does have an interesting, as you said, though, with Tenet, and I think The Way Back comes out, right? That's 2020.
The Way Back.
Godzilla versus Kong is this year, isn't it? I think that's coming out this year. So
Sure.
they have a Conjuring 3. Which surprisingly has been a hit for WB. The Conjuring series has done very, very well for them. So they, who knows, man? You're absolutely right. We have no ideas what lessons they're going to learn or anything like that, because they could have a decent 2020. And there is no way I'm going to root for a movie to do bad. I don't do that. I was rooting for Birds of Prey to do well. There's obviously, I'm a human being. There's a little bit of satisfaction that sits back there when a movie does tank a little bit and you're like, told you so. There's a little bit of satisfaction. I can't lie. I'm a human being. So I'm not going to sit there and tell you that satisfaction isn't there, but I'm not going to sit back here and root for a movie to do bad either. Too many people fight for these movies. They make these movies. It's everybody from the key grip, to everyone. There's a lot of people that work on these films, and I do not want to see these movies go to shit. But who knows what lessons WB is going to learn? We just don't know.
Yeah. Just like a final word from me on this whole thing. It saddens me, honestly. I'm not interested in the movie. I'm not happy with the way it was constructed and a lot of decisions that were made. However, I don't have the stance that I don't wish it exists. I do. There are people who like the movie and who it's for them. In terms of like the quality of the movie, the actors, the creative vision, it's fine that it exists. It's just not for me on multiple levels. Obviously, I'm not thrilled with the way that they marketed it and the way that they talked about it and the lack of investment in the market and the quality of the marketing. But overall, it makes me sad because these characters deserve better. This is a disgrace. Like, forget the fact, the numbers or whatever. It's a black mark on DC. It's disgraceful. It damages the brand. It damages the brand of the characters. And overall, that's the main thing. It makes me sad. It really does. Yeah, that's my final word on.
Yeah.
To further that, with every new DC movie we get, it just makes me feel a greater sense of loss for what we lost with the Snyderverse. It just makes you, and I mean, I appreciated those movies already, but when you see these, I mean, I actually went back and watched the first half of Suicide Squad earlier tonight before we did the podcast, and even that, it looks so much better in comparison to what we've seen from the trailers. Like, it just made me appreciate Suicide Squad wasn't nearly as bad as people make it out to be. It's a good movie.
Watching it,
it has issues.
What do you think of what I said about the look and the originality and the feel and the tone and how there's nothing else out there quite like it?
Yeah, it's kind of unique. No, it does drag a little in parts. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the banter. When they start bantering, that's where it starts to lose me a little bit. So it's by no means like a perfect movie, but I loved a lot of it. It's got a real interesting look and feel to it, and it keeps you engaged. And it's, as I say, I started to get tired of the shtick a little bit towards the end. The disposable blob creatures were, an odd choice, but now we know that wasn't the original plan. It was something that was retrofit in at some point relatively late in the game. But overall, I mean, God, I wish we had those movies back. That's what I come away from this thinking, is that I just wish we had those movies back.
Yeah, and
Can we get more of those?
And I agree too. I think Suicide Squad is what Lupe said. I agree with you. I think it is. It's very different. It's very unique in its space, and you could tell where the reshoots were and stuff. If you look closely, now that we know what we know, hindsight's always 2020. You can go into it and say, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's where the change was made. I can see it." And I'm different than Paul. I actually like banter. I don't like it overused, but I like it in a lot of movies because it makes the characters seem a little more real to me. They seem a little more human, because I think a lot of people actually react that way in situations. I've spoken with enough men in the military to say that they do that, especially when they're in battle. So it actually does make me kind of feel that way. But when it's overdone, I can understand exactly where he's coming from. I do miss those movies from the standpoint of where maybe I don't love everything that Zach did, or don't love everything that early DC production team did. But I repeat what I said before. It was a cohesive, connected universe where things kind of felt like they belonged together. Even if you had a director putting their individual style, they belonged together. Hate the MCU all you want, they belong together.
Mhm.
These just don't feel that way. And like Paul said a couple of minutes ago, not only are you getting movies that don't feel like they belong together, but now you're getting movies that look like one is made for a TV screen, and then the next one, Aquaman had a weak story but looked beautiful. It just was a beautiful movie, but the story was, it's just, so it's all over the place. It's up and down, and that's not what all of us were getting before. It's not.
All right. Well, that was an epic conversation on Birds of Prey. I think we can probably wrap it up there and move on to the next topic. Lupe, you want to lead us off on our next topic?
Yeah, sure thing. Let's just have a brief conversation about the Oscars that were last weekend, guys. I love the Oscars because it's a celebration of film at the highest levels. The level of interest in it is very varied. Some people really don't give a shit about it. Some people adore it to bits. Some people follow the most minute details from the red carpet. Some people just care about the speeches. So, guys, let's just have some brief comments on what we saw or heard and our reactions. I will start. I watched most of the films. We have a podcast on our channel that was a preview and also sort of a wrap up of a lot of the indie films of 2019. So even though the Oscars are over, you can still listen to that podcast because we talked about a lot of movies that weren't even nominated at all, and you can just see it as sort of a wrap up of the indie films of 2019. So the highlights, I'll let you guys talk about Joker. I'll talk about the fact that Avengers didn't win any, so I thought that was like quite interesting because the Academy, it's kind of weird how they nominate some movies and it seems like it's just for the popularity of it. I think that Martin Scorsese's comments bashing Marvel might have played a factor into that. I think that it kind of reminded people that the Marvel movies are not Oscar-worthy movies. They just aren't. I'm sorry for whoever wants to hate on me. It's just a fact. I don't care what your favorite bloggers have said or what Marvel fans try to spin. They are not. They are fun, empty, lighthearted. Just enjoy them. Well-made theme park, as Martin Scorsese says, movies. Marvel fans have been trying to push them towards Oscars, and they're not worthy of that. The acting performances are not worthy of that. The VFX are not worthy of that. So I think it definitely should not have won. Also, same thing for Star Wars. They tend to just nominate a Star Wars movie every year just because it's popular in Star Wars. So we're going to nominate it for a musical score. We're going to nominate it for VFX. And a lot of times I just feel like the VFX and the score aren't really that amazing. It's just almost like it's become a routine and just a way to get, the general audiences in. So I was quite happy that those movies didn't win because the wins are important. It's a standard bearer of this is what we should strive to. And I don't feel that they're particularly at the level that, that superlative level that people should be aspiring to. Apart from that, um, I thought that Parasite winning was one of the many films that if they won Best Picture overall, I'd have been okay with. Yeah, and it was a good, award season. A lot of these movies are really good. There isn't really one movie I can look at and say, oh, it doesn't deserve to. There maybe Jojo Rabbit. I feel Jojo Rabbit was good, but not deserving of the high level of prestige recognition. I also felt
That's interesting.
that, yeah,
People are all over that movie. That's interesting.
I think it's quite reductive. It's very simplistic. Yeah, it's just not worthy. Also, I think that Knives Out being rewarded for its screenplay, I just didn't think that the screenplay was really that fantastic, to be sincere. I think it's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, one of my favorites of the year. But when you talk about Oscars level, this is like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like mythical, untouchable levels. And I don't think that it gets quite there. So those are my overall thoughts. It was a great year in film. And yeah, those are my thoughts on the Oscars. I actually didn't watch the telecast because it was a mad busy weekend for me. But I watched Joaquin Phoenix's speech, and my goodness, it was like he was trying to win the Oscar for best Oscar acceptance speech. He made some compelling points about injustices and fighting for causes, and sort of united all our causes when we're fighting against racism, against sexism, against discrimination, against people who have disabilities, or if we're fighting for veterans' rights, or we're fighting for whatever rights, animal rights. He brought it all under one umbrella and said we're all fighting against injustice. And then he went on about some things about veganism and animals, and it was such a compelling, powerful speech. But I'm not going vegan or vegetarian. Sorry, not gonna happen. All right. So that's my brief reactions to the Oscars.
All right, Christian, you gonna go next?
If you want me to, it's up to you.
Go for it. Yeah.
I agree with Lupe. I think it actually was a great year in film for many ways. My fanboy in me was very happy with the movies that we got in 2019, and if you want to call the cinephile side of me, I'm nowhere near a cinephile as many of the Exiles, but that side of me with some of the movies that we got was also very satisfied with the movies. I think we got some great dramas, some good comedies, some great blockbusters. So yeah, I think 2019 was a fun year in movies, and I did not watch the Oscars for two reasons. I was very busy, as I told you guys before, with family, but I could have watched the second half if I wanted to. But the Oscars has come across to me in many years recently, especially, as just the Hollywood elite kind of patting each other on the back for what they did and celebrating each other for far too long now. It's become very political. I think back in 1999, I was turned off from the actual celebration and watching the Oscars when Shakespeare in Love beat Saving Private Ryan, and I wanted to throw up when that movie won Best Picture over, let me repeat, Saving Private Ryan. Are you fucking kidding me that movie won? And now that the allegations and everything that we're starting to learn about Harvey Weinstein has come out, and we know that he single-handedly bullied and pushed that movie to try to win Best Picture that year, really sickens me even more. Especially with the memory of the people, the men and women across all countries that died during World War II, and what Steven Spielberg was trying to do with that movie. And it's a travesty. And that's bothered me ever since I was a 19-year-old. So, but that's not to say that I don't appreciate the Oscars, and it's not to say that I don't appreciate the movies that come out. And I do keep tabs on it. I was watching Twitter when I was sitting on the couch, and my wife and I finally had an opportunity to sit down, and I definitely was keeping tabs on who won. I saw some of the speeches. Brad Pitt made me laugh with his John Bolton comments at the very beginning when I saw that, and I did see Joaquin Phoenix, and although he rambled a little bit, I do agree with a lot of what he said, Lupe. I'm with you on that. I appreciate with what Phoenix was trying to say there. And I'll agree with you. Look, I'm an MCU fan. You guys know that. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Marvel movies are not Oscar-winning movies, that they're not prime examples of what makes cinema. I would agree with that. I will disagree with you on some of the VFX and the music, especially. I think some Marvel movies, depending upon the movie, of course, I think some Marvel movies absolutely are spectacles, and I think they should be nominated for visual effects. Others, not so much. It depends on the movie. Endgame, I do believe, had great visual effects. Did it need to win an Oscar? No, it didn't. Does it validate the movie for me? No, I still love it. I really could care less if the movie wins an Oscar. It doesn't mean anything to me if it does, because again, going back to what you said, I don't see that as an Oscar movie. I don't think that that's an Academy Award winning movie. It was a movie that was made for an entertainment purpose and nothing more. And that was it. And it did entertain me. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It made me laugh, made me feel sad at certain parts, and it excited me at other parts. So Endgame did what it needed to do for me, but it was not Parasite. It was not Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it was not Ford versus Ferrari.
Mhm.
Let's be honest. Let's just be honest. It wasn't. I was a little bothered, to be honest with you, man, with the tribalism I saw online though, as silly as the fight for Endgame to get Best Picture and Robert Downey Jr. to get Best Actor was. I thought that was a very silly fight for people. Or using other movies to punch Endgame in the face, to me, was also like, who gives a shit? It's like, why do we care? It just doesn't.
All right, let me explain, because I made one of those posts. One, it was just funny to me, and I was just having banter. But this one thing about me with like movies and in general movie commentary, being critical of filmmakers, or this is my rule: I never punch down.
Mm-hmm.
To me, bashing a movie that's already down is mean. It's mean-spirited. It's a mess. It's disrespectful. But to me, like Avengers Endgame, it's the most popular movie of all time. It's the highest grossing movie of all time. It has a plus 90, Rotten Tomato score. It can take a few jokes. I think it will survive. It will be okay. It will be okay if we make fun of it. I don't think its reputation is in jeopardy of of taking hits. So that's the way I see it. If Endgame was a movie that was destroyed by critics and people hated it and it made no money, you would never see me making fun of it as something that didn't win an Oscar. I wouldn't be rooting for it. So it's just the punching up versus punching down thing when it comes to that. It's all banter for me. At the end of the day, to be sincere, Oscars don't really matter. I agree with you. Like in the podcast, I talked about it. Oscars are not going to change how I feel about a movie. Is it some validation? Yes, it is. Does it help us remember movies in time? Does it set a standard? Things to aspire to? Yes. But at the end of the day, for example, like King Arthur, Legend of the Sword is one of my favorite films of the past couple of years. Nobody recognizes that movie for anything. It's not recognized for awards. It didn't have good box office. Critics shitted on it. People don't know it. And it doesn't matter what y'all think. I love the movie to death. Watch it every once in a while. I have so many screenshots of it as screensavers everywhere. It's the best picture winner for the year in my heart, and that's all that matters. So, that's true. That's my reason for the tweet I made. And if you're listening to this and you haven't found the tweet, go on my Twitter page and look for the tweet. I think it's pretty hilarious. It was just jokes.
Hey, I laughed. There were a lot of people though that I think were way more serious than you, and the other way. I saw it the other way too. I saw Marvel fans getting all fucking fired up, and it was like, guys, relax. It doesn't matter. The movie made $2 billion. You didn't. Chill out. It's okay. You didn't get any of that money. If anything, you spent the money. So it just, everybody needs to relax. Back to what you just said, though, were there major surprises? I don't know if there were major surprises. I think a lot of people were really pushing for Parasite. Absolutely. I think if that 1917, if either one of those won, it wouldn't have been a surprise to me. I really liked The Irishman on a personal level. I enjoyed that movie. If that one won, I would have been very happy. Joaquin Phoenix, to me, seeing Joaquin Phoenix win for what he won for, and seeing Logan it got nominated a couple years back. I know Black Panther did. Heath Ledger won for his turn posthumously, I know, unfortunately, in The Dark Knight. This elevates that genre. My favorite genre of movies right now in comic book movies. It elevates it to another level. And I think it's wonderful to say that, these people that put their heart and their soul into it, you can get a great performance, you can get a great screenplay, you can get a great whatever. And every now and then you get one of those movies like a Logan that will be remembered for something different, not just being a spectacle. It will be remembered about being a journey about a human being, and you get to see their arc from beginning to end. And Phoenix transformed himself for that movie, and I absolutely think he was very well deserving of the award. I also think DiCaprio would have been very well deserving as well if he got it. Very happy for Brad Pitt. I thought that was awesome that Brad Pitt got it. He was, by the way, wonderful in Ad Astra too, and he could have gotten a nomination for that. He could have gotten a nomination for that too. I was a little disappointed in Charlize Theron not winning, just because I'm in love with that woman, and I love everything that she does, and not getting it. She was nominated for Bombshell, I believe, which I finally got a chance to see. And if you guys haven't, I highly recommend you seeing Bombshell. I think it was underrated. So, even though I didn't watch the Oscars, even though I didn't participate in all of it, I didn't watch the red carpet bullshit, I didn't necessarily go listen to every one of the dumb political speeches they made. I kept tabs on it. There were certain movies I hoped when I was wishing that they would win, and they did, and that was cool. And even when, you guys know how much I love Ford versus Ferrari, I really, really love that movie. And they used an extremely inventive way to create the sounds of the cars in that movie. So when it won for sound, was it sound editing? I believe it won for. And I read about that. That made me feel really good, because I was like, you know what? That team worked so hard to make people feel like they were inside those cars when you were watching that movie, and it came across in the movie, definitely. So to see that team win for that, I was really happy for them. So yeah, even though bottom line is I'll watch a movie whether it's an Oscar winner or not, it's the paramount, man. It is the top. It's the pinnacle for those people that work on those movies. So yes, congratulations to all of them. What more can you say? What more can you say? Did I lose you guys?
No, sorry, Christian. I'll keep my portion short. I don't watch the Oscars. I don't care about the Oscars. I don't care about the awards. I don't care about the celebrities. I certainly don't care about whatever political agenda they're pushing. I don't care about their overpriced outfits on the red carpet. I find some of that nauseating. I don't care about any of it. The one thing I will say is that I will look at the list of who won Best Picture or Best Director, and maybe even Best Actor or Best Actress, and see if any of those movies interest me. And then from there, I'll look them up and maybe try to watch them. Most of these movies I don't see in advance, because half the time I haven't heard of them. For example, for this year, I mean, I've got Ford versus Ferrari on my watch list. Jojo Rabbit I might check out. I've seen Joker in 1917. Haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Here's one that'll get me some heat. I am not a Quentin Tarantino fan. I think
Wow.
he is highly overrated. Again, but
Wow.
it's the quippy, the witty banter, right? That's just not my thing. I'm not into the witty banter. It feels forced and unnatural and overly scripted. I just don't. It's like it's trying too hard. One of the things I said about Birds of Prey, everything about this movie felt like it's trying too hard. That's how I feel about Quentin Tarantino movies, and Birds of Prey was actually compared to a Quentin Tarantino movie. So it's just not my thing. Marriage Story, I mean, I've heard of Marriage Story. Little Women I actually wanted to see, haven't had a chance to see it. But long story short, I haven't seen most of these films. So I'll look at these titles, and maybe I'll find a couple of them that interest me, and I'll check them out after the fact. But I just to sit there and listen to these celebrities push their agendas and smell their own farts for 3 hours, it's just not my thing. It doesn't impress me at all. So
I don't know.
Leave it at that.
Right.
What's that,
Lupe?
Lupe?
Much.
No. I think of it a lot more favorably than that. I do see how it can appear that way, but all right, let me try to relate this to something in I studied economics, so I studied a lot of sociology, and when you're looking at things, there's a perspective called functionalism. So you look at things and you think, okay, what is the function of this? Like, it persists. If it doesn't persist, if it wasn't functional, if it doesn't have a purpose, a useful purpose, it wouldn't exist. So why does it exist? And I think the reasons for the Oscars is, as I said, it's really, really important. It's not just people patting themselves on the back. It's awards are important in everything, whether it's basketball, whether it's the Oscars, whether it's music, whether it's awards at your school or at your job. It's it's a standard for people to aspire to and a standard for people to try to surpass. So next year, when people are making movies and they're trying to do the best thing, they're thinking, okay, in 1956, this movie won an Oscar because it did this. It was creative in this way. The filmmaking process was this, quality. I'm going to try to top that. And without awards, without quote unquote patting people's selves on the back, you don't get people pushing the craft further and further and further. And in terms of the pageantry and dressing up and all that stuff, it's also to add importance and add a weight to what you're doing. If you're going to an important event, you don't wear slacks and bathroom slippers. You don't just dress anyhow. You dress appropriately for how you value what it is.
I saw an article today though about Scarlett Johansson and at least one other woman wearing over $1 million of jewelry each.
Yeah.
Now I'm guessing they don't own. Well, maybe they do own it.
Yeah, no,
but
they're probably loaned.
They probably loaned, right? It just the pageantry around it doesn't do anything for me. Give me a list the next day. Do this stuff in private. Give me a list the next day, and that's all I care about. I don't care about any of the pageantry around it. I get the point you're making.
Yeah.
I don't care about the pageantry. I just don't.
I mean, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just trying to tell you why it's important and why people do it and why they pay so much attention to it and why.
No, and I understand those. I understand those points, and I think they're valid. I just don't. I don't need the pageantry. Give me the list. Give them. I mean, you could make these decisions and reward people.
That's when you organize the Oscars, you're just gonna email the list to people.
That's right. Just post it online. I'll see if I run next quarter.
That's great.
You know what though? I think the politics of it has really turned a lot of people off watching it because you get all the political pushing, you get all the fake humble, and then you get all the pageantry, and it's just I don't have the time for that or the interest, So give me the list next morning, and for me that's enough. For these people that work on these films that want to be recognized in this event, great. I just find it a little bit obnoxious to be preached to by a lot of these people when they're wearing $1 million worth of jewelry. That it rubs me the wrong way. So,
well, I think that's why what Lupe said is very true, and I agree. I think that this is the pinnacle. This is the peak, right, for them. So if you win, that's the peak, and that's why it's so important for some of the men and women that, especially that if it's best foreign film, or if it's sound editing, sound design, things like that, whatever it may be, the cinematographers, the director, costume design, things like that, those especially are very important. For me, I think where I lean more towards Paul is definitely with the actors, because somebody's making $10 million in their picture, and it's like, really, come on, man, and then you're gonna go. That's where I have the problem. It's not even necessary. It's not the people behind the scenes that suddenly now are getting thrust into the spotlight and finally are getting their moment to shine. Finally are getting their moment to say, fuck, I'm getting awarded for everything I did, for my life of hard work. And by the way, there are actors out there who also deserve that. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of the times they're not nominated for anything. They're just going because they're part of the Academy and they're sexy and they're hot and they're just awesome. And that's why. And I don't really care to see them, but I know exactly what you're saying, Lupe. Don't get me wrong. I hear you 100%, but it's normally for that other side that I'm interested in it, not the show. But you're right. The show has to be a part of it, because without the pomp and circumstance, who's going to believe that it's important? Mm-hmm. It has to be shown that it's important. Mm-hmm. So you don't get those people there. Is it as important? No. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nope. It's not. I agree with you. I hear where you're coming from.
Yeah. Varied opinions, and nobody has to watch it, but it's always just interesting to comment on it, talk about it. We love film. So we talk about all things film, and the Oscars is a big part of that. So those are our topics for the day. Lively discussion, very in-depth. Thank you guys for that. Now let's move on to our coming soon section, and we have 2 trailers to talk about. They dropped very recently. I said it's been a very lightweight week because the Oscars, took up all the oxygen in the Hollywood room. So the first one we're going to talk about is from Netflix. And Netflix, man, these guys, it can't stop, won't stop with Netflix. Every single month, they pretty much have a couple event level releases. Like Altered Carbon, if you all remember, season 1 was like their most expensive TV series ever. Like about 100 million, somewhere there when it was released. So I'm expecting that season 2 will be about the same budget. And so this season 2 stars Anthony Mackie, who takes on the exact same role that Joel Kinnaman played, but the reason why it works is because in this universe, people change bodies. The bodies are called sleeves. So I can see like every single season a different actor playing the same role, but wearing a different body, so a different actor can take on the role. And it's going to be released on February 22nd. So let's start with Paul. Paul, what did you think of the trailer for Altered Carbon Season 2?
Yeah, no, I like this. I mean, this is right up my alley. This is the kind of subject matter I like. So they'd have to screw it up for me not to be interested. I liked the first season of Altered Carbon. I thought it dragged a little in parts, but overall, I thought it was a really strong season. I like Joel Kinnaman. I thought he was good in the role. The production value is high. It felt pretty cinematic at times. It's the kind of thing I want to see more of. So I made sure to watch it, and I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to this season. Now, when I first heard that Anthony Mackie was announced, I got to say I was not impressed with that. At the time I had the visions of his interview with Frosty Weinberg from Collider. Yeah, or Weintraub, whatever his name is, where he ripped on Man of Steel, right? And I thought, like, I'd sworn after watching that I was never going to support anything that Anthony Mackie did again. It was just so disgusting, the way he trashed another artist's work, and work that I value, that I think is sort of the pinnacle of what we want. And to listen to him just disrespect it publicly like that, to talk about it, to talk down about another artist like that, it was just disgusting. So, I really, it's going to take some getting over for me still. That being said, he won some points back when I saw some of his comments from a couple of years ago, actually, that have been circulating more recently about how movies are made for teenagers and China now, basically, which is pretty true, right? So you can see that he's an intelligent guy. He might be a bit of an ass, and who knows? Maybe he was, maybe a lot of an ass. But so he was the one deterrent for me. But he looked good in this trailer. I'll give him credit. He looked he looked the part. If I hadn't seen that interview with Steve Weintraub, I'd be even more excited about this. So based on what I saw in the trailer alone, I'm really excited for this, and it's coming out soon. I think it's February 27th, so we're only 2 weeks away. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to be able to stop myself from watching this. I'm going to find some way to justify it. So I will watch this when it comes out.
All right, Christian, what do you think about the trailer?
I will say this about Netflix. Holy crap with their production design, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good God, their stuff lately, no matter what, even like The Witcher or not like The Witcher, the production design on that is out of control. This company has been doing it right when it comes to that, and now you're seeing them come out with more stories and more shows that are more cohesive, and just everything is coming. It's coming along a lot better than it was before. This is everybody would talk about House of Cards, and that would be like the only Netflix show that you could talk about, and now you can rattle off 10 in a row. I'm with Paul. I enjoyed the first season, although it had issues at times. It was a little slow, and I had a little bit of a hard time caring too much about the story. But from a sci-fi aspect, and I'm a huge sci-fi fan, it worked. Totally worked. Mm-hmm. I did a pod recently with Manu from our sister podcast from the Exiles Network, and we talked about The Hate U Give. Mm-hmm. And Hate U Give I found to be a fantastic movie. I thought it was a fantastic movie, and it affected me on a couple different levels. And Anthony Mackie plays a gang leader in that movie, and he's not really a true villain. If you think about the circumstances that the people that live in that community and live in that neighborhood are in, and he's the gang leader, he's serving a purpose. That's really what he's doing, and he's not necessarily a bad guy. And I felt that he played that character extremely well in that movie, not truly being a villain, but also not being a good dude. either. He really didn't. And he could have gone campy if he wanted to, and he didn't. And I really wish when I see stuff about him online, I see, my fellow Marvel fans going crazy and being like, well, he's Falcon. He's more than friggin' Falcon. For the love of God, he is not just Falcon. So seeing him in this, I was interested in, probably because I have seen him in other stuff. And I really would like to see him branch out and do other things. And I think that this is a way for him to do it. This looks exciting. As I said, production value is high. And if they do this right, because of the consciousness jumping that they have with this, you could do this every season where you have a different lead every single season moving forward. So yeah, this is really interesting. And because of my being a sci-fi fan, I think I'm going to be watching this one too, guys. It looks good. Looks good.
All right. Well, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of Anthony Mackie, and it's not because of his comments on. I could care less about what people do as personally. I'm pretty good at separating the artist from the art, but I just don't find him to be a very good actor. Even like there are a couple actors I feel that way about. Like for example, Matt Damon. I feel I don't like him as an actor in most things. He was amazing in the Bourne series, but apart from that, I haven't liked him in anything. He was good in Good Will Hunting as well, but apart from those two roles, I don't think he's good in anything. It's just not convincing to me. I don't like his face.
I hate his face.
That's my expert analysis. But also even Michael B. Jordan is another person that I don't like his acting in almost anything he's in. I did like him in Just Mercy. That role was tailor-made for him. His recent film opposite Jamie Foxx, which we talked about on the said podcast about 2019 indie movies. But Anthony Mackie is just one of those actors that I just don't like his acting mannerisms and his facial expressions and the way he conveys emotions. It just doesn't work for me. So I was quite disappointed, honestly, to see him cast because I do like this series a lot. Now, in terms of this trailer, it seems to vary from season one. It seems like it's a lot more action-packed. Season one was more of a murder mystery and had a film noir, sort of like a detective, neo-noir style to it. And this one seems like it's going to be an action series. And that bothers me a little bit, although something can be said about switching it up and not just rehashing the same ground you've already covered. So I guess we'll see how it pans out. The look, as usual, it looks beautiful. Neo-noir, neon colors, super colorful, great world building. I like that, that barkeep character, the Edgar Allan Poe AI is back. I really enjoyed him as like a sidekick / Alfred to Takeshi Kovacs Batman.
It's a cool costume.
Yeah, I liked him too. Yeah,
I like him, and I'm glad he's back. So yeah,
I like that hotel setting in general.
Yes, a really smart story device, to give him
a little bit like John Wick with the Continental, actually.
Yeah, exactly, and Batman with the Batcave. Yeah, like it's a tried and true trope, and they twisted it to suit the story, made it organic and natural, and so I will watch this series. I'm not sure when because I have so much stuff to watch. Oh my God, the list just blows my mind. I haven't watched the morning show from Apple, C from Apple, pretty much the Apple series. I haven't seen. There are too many shows to watch, but it's definitely
my queues are filled, man.
Yeah, dude.
It's
definitely going to go on the list, and it's one that I'm gonna get to in time. I'm currently watching BBC's Dracula, the miniseries, which is quite decent. It was a little bit overhyped, but I'm enjoying it so far. So those are my thoughts on the trailer. It looks. I'm hoping it's not a step down, but to be sincere, it looks kind of like it's a step down from the first one. But it's very, very difficult to follow up amazing debuts. It's usually easier to follow up a solid debut with something that tops it. So we will see. I'll give it a chance. It doesn't look bad at all. I would say that, and I will give it a chance. So let's move on to our second trailer of the day, and this one is The Hunt. Super controversial movie. Oh my goodness, when this movie was going to be released, Our dear President Donald Trump was able to twist the narrative like he tends to do, and everything just
Oh, you got
went,
political.
everything just went left. So the interesting thing is that a lot of times liberals, and I'm a liberal, I'm a proud liberal, have my strong liberal values. Liberals, we get accused of politicizing everything. We'll politicize sports, we'll politicize movies, we'll politicize music and preach to everyone. But in reality, conservatives are a lot of times as guilty as liberals. We're all human beings. We all do the same
Oh,
thing, just on different sides of the coin. So this one was politicized very quickly. It actually is a film that has political commentary, but the commentary was twisted, and the movie had to be shelved. It came in the wake of the whole Joker disaster thing, and finally, after the dust has settled, they were very, very smart, and this is something that a lot of people should learn. When you're dealing with a crisis, when your image is being tarnished, if there's anything going on, just let the dust settle. You don't have to like respond or verge it. Just hit pause. When cooler heads prevail, pop back up and do your thing. And that's exactly what they're doing. So a new trailer has come out. It's directed by Craig Zobel. I'm not very familiar with his work. It's not a big name director, but it stars Betty Gilpin. And if you have ever seen the Netflix again show Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, she's one of the stars of it. That was like her breakout role, where people were like, "Damn, like she can hold her own in a major role."
It was actually a good show.
Yeah,
I
that's
admit, it was a good
very,
show.
very cool. It also stars Emma Roberts. It stars Hilary Swank, aka Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, aka Where is Waldo, aka What Happened to Her Career. She's an Oscar winner. And it also stars Ike Barinholtz. So let's start with Christian. Christian, what do you think of the new trailer for The Hunt, which comes out on the 13th of March, which is just a few weeks away?
New trailer was a little crazy. It was a
Yeah.
little crazy. There's a lot of commentaries here about like cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we react so quick over everything. I mean, every picture that comes out there, no matter what it is, if it's just no one reads anything past the headline, right? We only care about the headline. That's basically it. And you're right. This was apparently a movie about people. They got captured, and this is what we see at the very beginning. They're gagged. They wake up. They're gagged in a field. Then all of a sudden they run to the middle, almost like a la Hunger Games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have access to all these weapons, and they're going to be hunted by the liberal elite. At least that's what the trailer seems to see. And then, of course, remember when conservatives flipped out, led by the president, they said it was going to be liberals hunt. It was going to be something different. It was just a mess. It was just a complete mess. So, okay, whatever it may be, the point is, in the United States, this movie also was coming in the aftermath of two deadly shootings. One was in Dayton, and the other one was in El Paso. And I think that it's virtually impossible, at least where I'm coming from, to take a look at when this movie was coming out and not seeing those two shootings. But I think everything that you just said at the beginning is 100% correct. You need to take a deep breath. Relax. I saw RoboCop when I was 7 years old. I played Mortal Kombat when I was 13. I have no desire to kill people. Okay. I have no desire to rip people's heads off. Relax. Bottom line is, this trailer, I'm happy. I think there's a larger conversation for the three of us to have on another day about creative freedom, about trying to stifle filmmakers and trying to stifle artists, and that's exactly what seemed to kind of happen this time. I understand that there were fears and there were sensitivity issues because people died. Definitely, I understand all that, but we want to be careful that we don't want to stifle this kind of stuff. We don't want to stifle filmmakers, because guess what? We got a trailer that was highly entertaining. It was out of control. There were moments of comedy. You could see the violence that we're going to see. I don't think they're going to be shying away from the violence at all. There was that scene where she had the big cut on her side and she's going to cauterize her own wound. I was like, oh my God, I felt the pain. I felt the pain when she was doing that. It hurt. So I don't think they're going to hold back in this movie at all. And I I love the little meta commentary that we're getting about everything that we're experiencing in our culture
Yeah.
right now. So yeah, let's
Yeah.
go for it. I'm all
Yeah.
in, man. I'm so sad that this movie didn't get released before, but I think there's going to be a whole thing surrounding it. This movie's probably going to do really well. Yeah, I think it is. So
Yeah.
interested in hearing Paul's thoughts. Go ahead.
It's going to do a lot better than it was going to. Yeah, it's going to do a lot better than it was going to without the controversy. I think so.
Yes, I agree. I think so.
Yeah.
And I
So
think at the end of the day,
let's hear what Paul has
but I
to
just don't
say.
think it'll be as bad as people think. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I'd heard very briefly about this when it got delayed, but I had no real interest in it. And I just heard the headline that it was liberals hunting conservatives for sport, basically, and that they wanted to shelve it. And I thought, well, that's an odd choice, but not to shelve it, but just an odd choice of film. I didn't really get a sense for what this film was, though, until I watched this trailer today, and it's not what I expected. It's more of a satire, right? It's sort of pointing out the it's making fun of both sides. I was expecting some hard liberal leaning, preachy film from the first, when I first heard about this, and it doesn't look like that. It looks like it's making fun of political extremes on both sides, and I think everyone can appreciate that. I generally don't like to get into politics, but when they're going to make fun of politics, that I can appreciate, right? So that I can get some enjoyment out of. So this actually surprised me. This is something I would want to see, and I didn't realize it, but this is actually written by Damon Lindelof, along with the person Nick Cuse, I guess. Yeah, it's written by Lindelof and fellow Watchmen collaborator Nick Cuse. Yeah, so that also gives me some hope for it, that this is going to be an intelligent intelligent film, and more than you'd think from the brief synopsis, more than you might assume from the synopsis and the narrative that was around it at the time. So I am actually somewhat excited about this one. I think this could be good, as long as they keep it balanced and just ridicule both sides. Like point out the flaws and the extremes on both sides, and don't make it preachy in a political sense. I think so. That would be the best case outcome for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got. I'll probably watch it.
Yeah. For me, one thing I didn't like about the trailer, I concur with everything you guys said in terms of excitement. The only thing I didn't like was that the trailer got very spoilery, but it's because the message. So basically, there's a twist. There's a big twist in it, and if you miss the twist, I'm not going to reiterate it. I'm just going to tell you not to watch the trailer anymore and not think too much on it. But there's a big twist, and they revealed it because the message of the first trailer kind of got, co-opted, and so they tried to cut a trailer where it's clear that this is not what you guys think it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they make all this meta commentary, and I think it's like super clever. I'm happy to hear that it's Damon Lindelof that wrote it. He's super, like, when you talk of like creative, hyper intelligent, genius, insightful writers, he is like at the top of the list. The dude is he's just blessed with the gift. And yeah, I love the fact that it seems to be biting commentary on both sides of the political spectrum, especially liberals. I'm a liberal, but as I've matured and gotten older, I've gotten to see that, with tribalism is a lot of times like, I mean, you feel your side is right, but don't forget, like, there's someone on the other side who feels that their side is right.
True.
So you have to be able to critique yourself. You have to be able to look in the mirror. You have to be able to see the humanity in other people and the humanity in yourself. The humanity in other people in that they're like you, and the humanity in yourself in that you're not perfect. And I feel like I'm always pleased to see movies that are able to take a critical look at, whatever side they're on. And let's face it, Hollywood is very liberal. It's largely liberal. So I'm very curious to see how this is done. And I feel like things like this, movies like this that criticize both sides, what they actually do is they tend to bridge the divide. That divide that we're experiencing in politics worldwide, where it's, my side versus your side. I feel like we all need to just, although we have our stances that we're not going to change from, don't bother trying to convert anyone. That's just a waste of time. And I see a lot of people on, Twitter, on Facebook, trying to convert liberals to Republican points of view, or Republicans to liberals. Like, you're wasting your time. But where we divide is to remember that none of us is perfect. We all want the same things. We're just going about them differently. And then when we can begin to do that, when we're able to criticize ourselves as much as we criticize others, then we can begin to bridge that divide and come back a little bit more together than we have. And so, I'm rooting for this movie. I hope it's good. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And I hope that it has a potent and impacting message that, has a positive effect on all of us. So yeah, a pretty good. I'm actually quite excited for this one. I'm not sure if I'll go out to the theater to see it on its own, but if I have a day to myself and I'm going to see a particular movie and I'm like, I have enough time to watch another one, I'll definitely try to tag this onto it. This weekend, Sonic is coming out. Also, I think I'm going to go see Birds of Prey. I'm going to see Sonic and Birds of Prey, and I think I'll be dropping reviews. So our audience, look out for those reviews. Also, you guys will be able to discuss those in more detail. But yeah, that's our show for the day. We have we've gone deep, we've gone far, and it's been a good discussion. So do you guys have any parting words you'd like to say on any of the topics that we discussed?
No, man, I know for me, I think I beat it to death. And if I say anything else, I'm just going to get hated. So
I agree.
Ditto. We've done
too
enough
much.
damage.
All right. So let's get out while the getting is good. So Christian, where can people find you on social media to attack you and call you a misogynist, hate-filled Marvel shill?
All
Don't forget
of the above.
Thin-skinned and small penis.
Yes, I forgot about that. I forgot about that too. Hey, I resemble those remarks.
Incel too. Incel's going around a lot right now. Anyone that doesn't want to see.
Exactly.
Oh, I forgot I am one of those. I forgot. Yes, even though I'm happily married. But yes, I'm an incel apparently. So yeah. So any hate you would like to throw my way can be thrown at me on Twitter at chart6363.
Nice. And Paul, what about you?
Likewise, you could throw that hate in my direction on Twitter at _Paul_P.
All right. And as for me, send all your hate mail to Live Love Lupe at Twitter and Live Love Lupe at Vero. My DMs are open also for hateful comments and death threats.
You said you weren't a masochist.
Well, I'm changing my ways. I'm trying it for size.
Broaden your horizons, right? You never know what you're into until you try it.
You never know until you try it. So that's been our episode for the day. We thank you for listening to us. Remember to subscribe, to like, to spread the word on this podcast. We put in a lot of effort. We put in a lot of passion into this. And the way that you can encourage us is to interact with us and to help spread the word on the podcast. And we will see you next week on another episode of ENN. Till then, stay exiled.